Hi, and welcome to Meet a Google Researcher, a series where we get to meet some folks who are advancing the state of the art in helpful technology, tackling some incredibly difficult problems. I'm Drew Calcagno, and I'll be your host. Today, we're going to dive into the physics models and machine learning techniques that one of our Google research teams made to simulate wildfires. And we're going to be able to hear from the truly inspiring personalities of the people who helped make them. Vivian Yang and John Anderson, two research scientists here, are interested in helping mitigate the effects of these wildfires by pushing the scientific capabilities of what's possible to predict in fire behavior using AI-driven simulation. So welcome, Vivian. Welcome, John. I'm so glad that you're here.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Great. Vivian, why don't you kick us off? Tell me more about yourself.
Hi, I'm Vivian. I work on wildfire simulations and also weather and climate modeling at Google Research.
Wow, very cool. And John, tell us more about you.
Yeah, I'm John Anderson. I've been working in simulation for most of my career. Spent a decade or so as a professor, a decade or so in the special effects business, and
Wow.
a decade at Google.
That's absolutely inspiring. And I can only imagine you've had some inspiration to get into this type of work. So what got you into wildfire research?
In 2020, so our family came back from a trip from Yosemite.
Oh, really?
All was fine, but then we drove into heavy smoke area because that year there were many large wildfires. I became really worried about our living environment and did some investigation and got to know that the wildfire situation may become worse because of global warming. So I'm thinking I want to use my skills to do something, either to help mitigate this issue or help people adapt to this kind of climate change.
And that type of adaptation, I'm sure, takes a lot of brain power and computing, hardware, software, all of this. And John, I want to know from you, what makes wildfire studies so important?
Right now, in the last 5 years to the last decade, we've been dealing with a really new class of wildfires. These fires grow very fast, they move very fast, and they move faster than we can react, often faster than we can evacuate people. A couple of fires in Northern California, which have attracted a lot of our attention, the Tubbs fire, which ended up destroying the northern part of Santa Rosa, California, actually burned down the houses of two of my friends.
Oh, gosh.
And then the next year, the Camp Fire destroyed Paradise with a significant loss of life. And we've been trying to understand what gives rise to these fires. They're, in some ways, a completely different animal. They grow fast, they move fast. We haven't really seen very many fires that look like this. And because of that, we have to approach it differently. We have to approach it by starting from first principles with simulations, because we've only got a handful of these fires. You can't just say, let's take 1,000 of these fires, run machine learning classifiers on them, and figure out which ones are going to move fast.
And we don't want more
and you don't
to
want
be able
more,
to study.
Honestly, yes. So in order to get the information to train these classifiers, we rely on very high resolution, very much first principles models to build the training data. And then we build machine learning models so that we can actually work on these in real time. It doesn't really do us much good to simulate the Tubbs fire, which happened in 5 or 6 hours, the explosive growth phase, if it takes us 4 days to simulate it, right? But we can take that simulation that takes us 4 days to simulate and train machine learning models that are much faster. And we can correlate the weather conditions that are associated with these fast-developing fires, and then tie those together with machine learning models to make predictions of where we're likely to see fast fires, where we have to be extremely concerned about doing evacuations.
And you talked about these machine learning techniques. I know that you used physics models as well in your study of that discipline. So why is Google uniquely positioned in this place to be able to harness both of those disciplines, fuse them?
Google has special purpose hardware that was originally designed for the purpose of running machine learning models.
Right.
We've actually been able to build physical simulation models, fluid dynamics models, for a limited class of problems. And in particular, these class of problems where the formulation of the problem is fairly simple, but the computational needs are very large.
I imagine just immense.
Immense, right? So, we simulate the Tubbs fire on a 4-meter isotropic grid.
Can you explain that to me?
We've got a three-dimensional grid, right, composed of boxes that are 4 meters each.
Okay.
And we've got a domain that's 20 kilometers tall, 15 kilometers wide, and 25 kilometers long, and you can do the math. This is a lot of grid points, right?
Yes.
Because of the fact that when you get down to these very small spatial resolutions, the physics actually gets simpler. Because
That's
a lot
surprising
of
to me.
Well, no, because a lot of the things we care about that generate complexity in models come from trying to simulate the collective effects of small-scale stuff. If you simulate the small-scale stuff, pure brute force, you actually can use very simple models, and it allows us to use this class of machines that we built to use machine learning with. Now, you take those physical simulations and use those to generate training sets.
John talks about scale and how immense that at least seems to me. What are some of the other challenges that you're facing, especially when applying these ML techniques?
Wildfire propagation is a complicated process. There are turbulence, chemical reactions, fire-weather interactions involved, right? In order to build an accurate model, we need to we not only need to understand the physics behind it, but also we need to set up the correct parameters for the model, right? We need weather information like temperature, wind speed and direction, and air humidity, etc. We also need fuel condition information. But it's important, we need to know what the vegetation type is.
Okay.
Is it grass, bush, trees, or mixed type? And also we need to know what is the moisture content. Because as we know, fire spreads faster in dry field than wet ones, right? Is it uphill or downhill? All those factors all affect how wildfire behaves and their propagation rate.
All of the data that you have in existence already probably doesn't have that level of granularity, and you're trying to simulate more granular, more parameters, more labels to better understand its behavior.
That's right. There are some weather stations, but they are very sparsely distributed. There may be 1 or 2 in a national forest.
So there's a real big need for this type of simulation.
Right.
Wow.
And also we have satellite images that can give us some useful information on the field condition. However, they can't tell us the details about field types in the scale of meters or even centimeters.
Right.
Satellite can capture wildfire images from time to time. However, they either have very low spatial resolution, like in 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers.
Oh, so that's too coarse.
That's too coarse. Or they have very low temporal resolution, like every 3 or 5 days.
John, what are some of the wildfires that you've learned from recently? I know that there's been a lot, especially in the area near where we are in California.
So I think the most interesting phenomenon with these severe fires, with fast-growing and fast-moving fires, is that to some extent they make their own weather.
Wow.
There's a phrase that's become very popular lately, pyrocumulonimbus, which basically just means fire thunderstorm, where you have a fire.
Something I don't want to be in.
Yeah, it basically means the fire starts a thunderstorm, and then that thunderstorm is involved in the propagation of the fire.
Okay.
And so, we're doing simulations of this class of fire, and we're just beginning to understand how they work. I mean, there's a good analogy. 30 years ago, we were just beginning to understand how severe thunderstorms work, how tornadic thunderstorms worked. And it was really the numerical simulations of these storms that gave rise to really understanding how they happen, because just like severe fires, severe tornadoes are fairly rare too, right? There are not a lot of F5 tornadoes in the world, thank God. But by simulating them, we can understand what actually causes these things to happen, and we can talk about predicting the kind of conditions where they happen, right? And so when you look at, say, the Camp Fire, right, where ideally you would have evacuated Paradise earlier, but evacuations are not cheap, right? And they're not free of hazard. You have to move people in a hospital. There's a real hazard associated with that. You really need to know what the time window you're working with is. What's the soonest can this fire become an issue here?
And your simulations can help
we
determine that.
We believe so, yes. I mean, that's that's why we're doing this, okay?
And so building off of why you're doing it, Vivian, can you tell me some more about who stands to benefit? I mean, John, you mentioned folks that may evacuate sooner than they expected, or have better predictions ahead of time.
Yeah.
But who stands to benefit?
Firefighters.
Okay.
They are closest to wildfire dangers. So before they set off to the field to fight fire, they actually need to check the weather condition. They also need to check the fire location and the other situation. However, they also need to check the weather forecast for the next few hours, because the change of the wind can change of the how the wildfire spread and how fast the wildfire will spread. So they, based on their experience and all this information, sometimes they run some empirical model to forecast what would be the change. So we aim to build a machine learning model to include all this information and quickly and accurately forecast how the wildfire will behave.
Thank you so much both for being here. I'm incredibly heartened by all the research that you're doing. I think it will truly help both firefighting authorities, the public, and the research community in between. And so I'm very grateful that you came by. Thanks, Vivian. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for giving us a chance to talk about the work.
Of course. Stay tuned for more episodes on helpful technology from Google Research coming soon.